It's August 21st, and we are going over the news and notes from the first week of training camp here on the Fantasy Whispers.
Right here!
What's good, Whisper Nation? Welcome to this Friday afternoon. It's August 21st. We've got a full week now of actual football training camp to cover. My name's Austin Sear, your handcuffed, headbanded host with a contrarian take coming at you alongside Johnny Game Time Hicks, son of DJ Moore, and Terry McLaurin. How are you doing today, Game Time?
I'm doing really, really well. The stream is hopefully going well. Let us know in the comments. I don't know. It's been crazy so far. We decided to do this Friday show, and my computer did not want to have it. It thought it was going to get today off.
And it did not. Just like us here, we're bringing it to you, me, Johnny, and of course, cannot forget to mention Big Travie. Take him in the second round, Patrick Mahomes, Caples. That's our
Topper.
No, we'll just pick it up. Should pick it back up.
fresh start.
Okay, we should be back now. Think.
So I'm not doing the intro?
No.
No intro.
No intro. We're back live.
No,
we're back
good.
live
We're
right
back.
now. I think so. Should be.
Oh my goodness. All right, I see it on my screen. It looks like it's working. Happy to be with you here, Whisper Nation. I'm Austin Sear, your headband host, alongside your other head-adorning hosts here in Big Travie, Johnny Game Time Hicks. We've handled the technical difficulties. Teams are out there handling a couple of technical difficulties of their own. So, what do you say? Are we ready to start jumping into some of these news and notes from around the league that we've got from the first week of camp?
Yeah, I'm excited. A little bit of football in the air. Let's get into it.
All right. So as we had said in our intro early on, this is a COVID offseason that's not going to have any preseason games this year. It's not going to give fantasy players that opportunity to see, Patrick Mahomes connect with Tyreek Hill for the first time that they're playing a couple of years back, or to see these breakaway players, or to get ideas about where coaches and offensive coordinators are leaning in. So we've got all these questions, whether it be what's the backfield situation in Buffalo looking like, or who's the main receiver out of the New York Jets camp going to be? We got a ton of those question marks that we're going to be relying on the beat writers of those teams to help shed some light on what we're looking at and to help answer some of our questions. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and jump into some of these points. One of these disgruntled backfields is the Denver Broncos. We know the Denver Broncos brought in Melvin Gordon. They signed to a 2-year, $16 million contract. We've also got Philip Lindsay over there, who might not be as physically impressive as Melvin Gordon, but his production has been undeniable. Johnny, what kind of information, or what should fantasy owners expect now that we've got a week of camp and a little bit more clarity than we did a week ago about the Denver Broncos backfield?
I mean, they're coming out and they're saying that there's going to be opportunity for both of these running backs, which we've kind of been going along the same lines anyway. It's been going around, Melvin Gordon should get the goal line work. He should, they're saying that he'll also be involved in the passing game. And don't sleep on Philip Lindsay either, because he'll be getting, a lot of carries. So I like both of these guys. I like investing in both these guys. They're going to run the ball. They want to play an upbeat type of offense. And so, if you are going wide receiver heavy, and early in your draft, and you want to grab Philip Lindsay later, or if you want to grab him as a handcuff, I think that all of that stuff is good. But ultimately, I think the big question comes here is, well, does this make Melvin Gordon kind of overvalued, or if anything, like, should you be drafting him if you're going to be able to get a guy, 7 rounds later that's going to somewhat give you the production? And I would say I would still go with Melvin Gordon. I would still invest with Melvin Gordon in the third round, because he does have that touchdown upside, like we were talking about, on the mock draft that we did yesterday or 2 days ago. And so I love grabbing both of these guys.
I want to get Travis's opinion on that one a little bit, because getting a second, third round running back who's really going to be just a part of a true committee situation, that feels just a little bit risky. I love those touchdowns. I love the talent. But Travi, are you feeling comfortable now still taking Melvin Gordon where his current ADP is?
I feel so finicky with Melvin Gordon. Like I started the offseason not really liking him. Then I came back around to him on Mock Draft Marathon. I mean, me and Johnny just did a show where like he was my change of heart player where I was coming around to him. And like as Johnny said, in the third round, it's still not that terrible, especially if this offense hits on all the levels that it wants to hit on. You know, they did all these things to bring weapons in around them. But I have been recently, just in a couple mock drafts today and yesterday, kind of punting Melvin Gordon and trying my best pick up Philip Lindsay at the back end, you know, in that ninth round, as Johnny was talking about, 6 or 7 rounds later, depending on how it goes. So I think I'm usually smashing another running back like James Conner before or Chris Carson even before I'm picking Melvin Gordon. So that's just kind of where I'm at with it. This news didn't help either. We're talking 1A, 1B. So
Melvin Gordon and Philip Lindsay both valuable, but Melvin Gordon slightly inflated ADP, and potentially then Philip Lindsay way undervalued ADP.
Yeah, I just want to to go to Johnny's point though. I do want to bring up like we talk about how the beat writers are going to essentially be our preseason this year, but in the past we've seen where these fluff pieces actually misconstrue ADP and screw us up a little bit. So you have to take things with a grain of salt. We're not getting preseason. That doesn't mean you need to go jump all over every beat writer thing. Start to think analytically about where these carries could come from with this offense. If this offense is good, you're going to want the guy who's the red zone guy because he's going to fall in for a few touchdowns and really make up for anything that you say he would not be good at it as far as yards per carry.
I just have a question. Like, we act like Melvin Gordon hasn't seen an entire career. I mean, Austin Eckler. Like, do we think Philip Lindsay is better than Austin Eckler? Because unless
No,
you do,
well,
like,
I
mean,
and I get that point, John. But the other point is the Chargers' offenses have been a lot better than the Denver offenses in the past. So you're putting a lot on Drew Lock's shoulders to be a 14-year, 15-year veteran like Philip Rivers has been. So
I'm just
I
asking
just
him
don't
to
know.
turn
Like,
around and give the ball off to Melvin Gordon. I think that this is going to produce a lot of opportunity. I think that, being concerned that he's not the lead dog, like he hasn't been that, and this is the furthest down the draft board that you can ever get him. We've never had any complaints before, and then all of a sudden, I just don't see what all of a sudden has changed at all, other than him going to a different team that paid him money to obviously be their goal line guy. More Melvin Gordon for me, I guess.
The one concern I have, because I'm with Travis on coming around to Melvin Gordon, and Johnny had really done a great job of selling him to me earlier, and he is that goal line back he's the goal line back because he's big, he's a bruiser status, but he's faster than Philip Lindsay. And I think that the beat writers might be sharing what the coach's expectations and hopes are, but if you get out there and Melvin Gordon is hands down the superior back, you're going to see a lot more workload going to Melvin Gordon. My just one concern with Denver is that we're going with Drew Lock, a quarterback who's still unproven. He only started, less than half the season last year, and in those games he started, he threw under 200 yards more than he threw over 300 yards times 3. He had 3 games of under 200 yards passing and only 1 game above 300 yards passing. They don't have a ton of weapons over there. One of the reasons why we've been so excited about Noah Fant, because behind Cortland Sutton, we know Jerry Jeudy's over there, but rookies oftentimes have a tall ladder to climb to become relevant right away. So I'm looking at this as a defensive-driven team that might be trying to control the pace of the game and just not have as many opportunities for Melvin Gordon as he did with Philip Rivers and all of the offensive weapons that the San Diego and then Los Angeles Chargers had. So I think that Melvin Gordon, to Johnny's point, is going to definitely emerge as that superior guy that you want. It just might take a little bit of time for him to really own the lion's share because the coaching staff doesn't sound like they want him to own the lion's share, at least starting out.
I don't think he will ever be the only running back there. Like, Denver has never done that. I don't think that's ever the case.
Good
and
point.
like, I understand what you're saying about Drew Lock last year and how he has only, he hasn't thrown over 300 yards. And he's a rookie. Is it going to be consistent? No, it's not going to be for the wide receivers. But there was a reason why he didn't have monster games passing, and that was because they had Cortland Sutton as their only passing option last year and Noah Fant, sure, but like if you go and watch the game tape on Drew Lock, he was having difficulty throwing it down the field because he was so worried about double coverage on Cortland Sutton. And so now you're bringing in these playmakers that you can't necessarily, okay, if you want to double team Cortland Sutton, go ahead, because I got Jerry Jeudy over here I know is going to be in the spot that I need him to be in. And so it's going to make him be more confident in throwing. You got to remember, this guy's a gunslinger. He's got that Jay Cutler mentality. That is why they went out and got him. And like they got him because he has a big arm. Like coming in, he had one of the bigger arms in that draft class. They were saying he had like the second or third biggest arm behind Josh Allen that year. So this guy has that in him. It's just whether Denver can bring it out. So that's just all that's where I stand on it.
And to Johnny, one final point here I will make, and to Johnny's point, I think the idea here is that Denver went from one of the run heaviest teams last year to now they're probably set up to be one of the more pass heavy teams this year because of the fact that Pat Shermer's coming in. He with the Giants just last year, he was top 8 in pass attempts with the Giants. So you're looking at a situation where I think they do, and they've said, look, the Chiefs are in our division. We're going to play them twice. We're going to have to keep up with them, not only just try and defend them. We're going to have to actually score with them. And so to Johnny's point, this actually could create more opportunities, not just for Melvin Gordon, but Philip Lindsay. I think in my strategy this year, though, in attacking drafts, I am just saying I'm probably avoiding Melvin Gordon, but I'm not steering away from Philip Lindsay. I am actually looking at Philip Lindsay in later rounds.
I think that Pat Shermer inclusion is really important there because they did pass the ball so much. They did move it the way that they did. And if you think about the weapons that the New York Football Giants had last year, I'd say they were less impressive than what the Denver Broncos have currently. The majority of the time, they didn't have Saquon Barkley healthy. They were working with Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, who emerged later on. So these guys
I thought
are
he was just brought
fine,
in as the
but they're
quarterback
not
coach.
Walmart players.
Sure.
Yeah, wasn't he brought in just as the quarterback coach?
No, I'm pretty sure he's the offensive coordinator now.
I think Denver's going to be an exciting one to keep an eye on at all of the positions, tight end, wide receiver, and running back, which we've, obviously here discussed. And moving on to another backfield that's been a lot of question marks as of late, that's in Detroit. We've got Deandre Swift and we've got Kerryon Johnson, which we've talked a lot about. We love the upside of Swift. Kerryon has just been hanging on for a couple of years now, but he is still that more familiar face. And it's looking like running back by committee is going to be coming out to start, at least according to Lions beat writer Tim Twentyman, who thinks that they are going to be sharing the duties of this season. Johnny, I know you've got a lot of strong opinions here on Swift and Kerryon. Does this news coming out of Detroit shift any of your opinions right now on either one of those running backs?
Not at all. I figured that they're going to, again, we've said it, a lot on our show, but this is a COVID off season where rookies didn't get that time. And so this is great news for people who are looking to draft Swift because it's keeping his draft value down because people are unsure and, Detroit's backfield and all of that. But I would very much, to quote Travie, Big Travie here from last year. He was most famously known for his Miles Sanders quote on how Miles Sanders, if you take him, he will ride you into the championship near the end of the year because he'll take over. He's that talented. That is very similar to what Swift will do this year. He is way more talented at every facet of the game than Kerryon is. And so by the mid to late season, that is when Swift is going to really kick it in for your fantasy team. So if you are counting, if you're going like wide receiver heavy or, take a quarterback early and you're depending on Swift to be like your RB2 to start off, it might be a little shaky and you might be off to a slow start. I would bank on grabbing a couple other pieces until Swift can truly get going. But to start off, I see them working him in slowly.
Definitely what's going to be happening here. And I want to get Travis' take on another high-profile conversation that's been going on, and that's out of another NFC North team, the Minnesota Vikings and Dalvin Cook, their star running back, who has been notorious this offseason for looking for that contract upgrade. He's threatened to hold out, and where it currently sits is negotiations have stopped. He's at camp because of a rule in the CBA. He's kind of practicing, kind of not. It's looking like he's going to be reporting for the game number 1, but he's not a happy camper. And he's using some of these other tools that he's got in his tool belt of just like, I'm here, but I'm not really playing. I'm just here so I won't get fined kind of status.
Yeah.
Travis, does this give you any pause if you're drafting Dalvin Cook there in that first round?
No, quite the opposite, actually. And he said some things like he's refuted that he ever even was in disputes with them, which we know is kind of BS. We can see the writing on the wall. Like, you definitely want a bigger contract before the end of this year. So we get that. But I would just say, like, I'm still comfortable drafting him within the top 6, top 5. He's got everything on the wall here. He's got a contract here. So if he sits out, he does himself no service by showing what he can do in a full season. The biggest knock on him is that he's not played in enough games. So why would he not put more games on tape? That's all within the leverage that he needs to do. And so I'm fired up for Dalvin Cook. I'm actually glad that the CBA was structured this way. Selfishly, as a fantasy player, I'm jealous because he has to go out there and kind of play at this point. And so I'm fired up for Dalvin Cook. He's one of those true bell cows, and there's a case to be made that you maybe put him ahead of Alvin Kamara in your rankings because he is a true bell cow. He's going to get the usage. I will just say this, though. Remember, as he sits out of practice, Alexander Madison is getting all those reps. So make sure you have a contingency plan. He's one of the few handcuffs I would advise that you snag in Alexander Madison.
I like that a lot there. And as the guy here who loves taking handcuffs, this is one of those perfect kind of situations for me because Alexander Madison is no slouch. That man can play football at a very high level, but he is not going to be taking over Dalvin Cook's job. This guy is a borderline superstar talent. And as long as he's healthy and playing, Dalvin Cook is Dalvin Cook. But Alexander Madison is very good. So if you can get him as a handcuff to Dalvin Cook, you're going to be sitting pretty all season long.
This is what we call, folks, this is what we call a perfect segue, is when I tee it up for Austin to be able to grab his handcuff. He's good for one handcuff plug every episode. I just teed him up there. I should have known better.
Well, the difference is a Melvin Gordon and Philip Lindsay situation versus a Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison situation where you are expecting a little bit of an RBBC. And so Philip Lindsay's now in those single-digit rounds, as where Alexander Madison is going to be an elite handcuff that you can get in those double-digit rounds. So it has a little bit different. And you'd like to see one guy getting that workload. And in the Vikings backfield, it's going to be one guy getting the workload predominantly. Just like in Dallas, it's going to be Zeke who's getting that workload. But if he goes down, Pollard is an immediate number 1 off the waiver wire ad that week if he's not already taken. So yes, I do love to plug my handcuffs, but I keep doing so I can differentiate what type of handcuff situations are more valuable than other handcuff situations.
That's fair.
And of these handcuffs, Johnny, I wanted to get your take on a guy you had just mentioned here. That was Miles Sanders. He left practice with an undisclosed lower body injury. The Eagles are listing him as week to week. It's not day to day, it's week to week. A little concerning. And I know you've talked a lot about Boston Scott. You're a big fan of Boston Scott. When I see it, this just gives him more opportunities working with that first team to show everybody what he's really about. How does this factor into the ADP and your selection of Miles Sanders, who's worked his way up into the first rounds of most fantasy drafts?
Well, we've actually got Boston Scott is actually dealing with an injury as well right now, but he is listed day to day and not week to week, so that's kind of interesting. But again, we talked about this a little bit, but with the Miles Sanders, I could definitely see this much more as a precautionary. He's definitely injury. If they definitely keep monitored as you get closer and closer to the season. But I could definitely see that Miles Sanders is a big part of their game plan this year, and they don't need him, starting off the season not 100%. But I do like seeing Boston Scott, and I said this, if you follow us on Twitter or on our Instagram channel, that if you go to our Instagram channel, I had said that this makes me excited for Boston Scott even more so at the later rounds, because then you can grab him, and I can definitely see them easing Miles Sanders in through the first 4 weeks as they revamp him up. And then it's like, okay, then Miles Sanders takes 75% of the snap share here. I could definitely see that happening, and so I like Boston Scott a lot more. And then, but you have to also say, speaking of opportunity, Corey Clement right now is the guy that is taking those first team reps. Obviously, he's played in the Super Bowl with them; they trust him. So he is a guy definitely that you, if you're in Dynasty, I would go pick him up. But, if I'm in a redraft league, I'm not really looking to pick up Clement because I don't think that there's much upside there. What I do think is, I want to ask you guys about, what do you think is the likelihood? And here's where the concern would actually truly step in for Miles Sanders for me, because I'm still okay with you taking him in the back half of that first round. But if they do go out and sign a veteran running back, that could spell some real concern for Miles Sanders and Miles Sanders owners. I'm really, as one that just drafted Miles Sanders in our listener league, I'm really hoping that does not happen. But Devontae Freeman is still out there, and there are a couple other running backs out there as well. So, Gus Edwards is also available. So that will be when you should hit the panic button a little bit more. Right now, I think you're okay.
Now is he putting us back in that Doug Peterson system, right?
Yeah, I think you summed it up correctly, Johnny. Like, that's the way to hit it. If they pick up somebody off the streets, then you're really upset as somebody who drafted Miles Sanders or a Miles Sanders truther. But at this point, some of the other beat writers are saying they've talked to people within the thing. He's going to be fine. So we just have to monitor that.
Yeah.
Other players that we're monitoring dealing with some injuries. Nick Chubb out of the Cleveland Browns backfield recently suffered a concussion. He looks like he's going to be doing all right. But we have to say that Kareem Hunt's getting more opportunities. Kareem Hunt is a real RB1 who's just playing behind an elite running back there, Nick Chubb. Kareem Hunt, though, I mean, he's going to be challenging Nick Chubb in some ways, much to Johnny's chagrin. So before we get his take on this one, I do want to hear from Travis of how this injury to Nick Chubb, the concussion, as well as Kareem Hunt's continued involvement, is appropriately or not appropriately impacting Nick Chubb's ADP, who's still going there solidly middle to end of the first round.
I will take Nick Chubb if he's in the second at this point. I'm not going to take him in the first. I think that you're missing out on a potential other bell cows where you're seeing a situation in Chubb now. At best case scenario, he comes right back to his role, which is the dominant first and second down back, with Kareem Hunt taking the pass catching options from them. Now, to Johnny's probably what Johnny may or may not say here is that we haven't seen Kevin Stefanski call the offense for the Browns yet. So maybe he's just going to be more inclined to pound the rock with Nick Chubb. But my thinking is more along the lines like, if Chubb's going to be dealing with stuff, and maybe this does give the coaching staff a little pause for concern. Maybe they're saying, okay, well, maybe we should ease Chubb back into everything. And they're seeing what Hunt can do more and more in practice now, getting the first team reps. I don't know. I think to pretend that Kareem Hunt doesn't exist is a mistake here, but Johnny makes a valid point all the time about how much this offense will run the ball under Stefanski. And that alone could mean that Nick Chubb could end up leading the league easily in rushing this year. And so if you've got that going for you, then he's probably, you should smash him at his second round ADP, in my opinion. Or if you're at the turn, taking him and another back, I agree with. But I'm just hard pressed to take him in the first round.
Johnny,
I'm just gonna say that if you have the concern and you don't want to, if you're like, hey, I would rather have Kareem Hunt. Listen, I'll be the first one to side with people because that's usually my strategy. Give me the best value of the running backs. But I'm gonna sit here and tell you that Nick Chubb, like Travis alluded to, and I'll back it up with a really nice stat here. They are going I don't think people understand how much they are going to run the ball. They brought in playmakers that can win at their positions, and then they are going to pound the rock to open up those guys, get them open up in one-on-one coverage. And they are going to play 12 personnel a lot, which is 2 tight ends on the field, 2 wide receivers, and a running back. And when you do that for Nick Chubb, you're looking at 5 yards per carry behind that offensive line that is much, much improved. and you're still going to get Nick Chubb carrying the rock 20 times a game at 5 yards a clip plus the touchdown upside. Now, if you do want to bring in Kareem Hunt, I do think he's going to get 10 to 15 touches in this offense. They could spread him out and make him a receiver. There are going to be instances when both Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb are on the field, both as running backs at the same time, because they like to run that kind of offense. And let me just make everyone a little bit more excited about this offense and running it. Most people don't realize that Minnesota actually had one of the faster up-tempo offenses in the league underneath Stefanski. And that is not going to change this year. In fact, it could get even faster because of who they have at their skill positions compared to last year. And the fact that Baker Mayfield, let's be honest, is a better quarterback at this. Well, he will be a better quarterback at this position because he likes to take more risks. He's willing to run a little bit more. He's willing to throw it to his playmakers, and the playmakers are better than they were in Minnesota. And so this offense is going to run efficiently, effectively, and they are going to get off a lot of plays. And so both of these guys will have value 100%. But, like I had said, if you are afraid of taking Nick Chubb in the first, that's fine. If you can get him in the second, you got to steal. You really did.
Yeah, I definitely did. For me, I agree with both of your takes on here. Nick Chubb is in this really unique situation of being a part of a two-headed monster, but you're not totally concerned about it. I would be taking Nick Chubb well before I would be grabbing, say, Aaron Jones, who's also going to have competition facing him. I think that Nick Chubb is just going to be sought to be the lead dog in the main vein from that rushing attack. And even with Kareem Hunt over there, I think he's still going to serve a supplementary role, even if it's a significant one. Speaking of supplementary roles, I want to talk about Chase Edmonds and Kenyon Drake out of the Cardinals backfield. Kenyon Drake balled out at the end of last season with the last 5 games just doing RB1 type of work. Cliff Kingsbury, we know, wanted to do the air raid, but Kenyon Drake is really making a case that they should be pounding the rock a lot more. Going a little bit after Nick Chubb, we know that Chase Edmonds has been labeled to have starting running back skills, kind of like the Michael Gallup has wide receiver 1 skills, but is still behind a guy who is a very good player of themselves in Kenyon Drake. Johnny, sticking with you here, the man out of Arizona, any of this recent news changing your outlook on Kenyon Drake?
Absolutely not. And I think that if anyone, I would use this. I would use this as a tactic to help argue to try to get Drake to fall in your leagues. Listen, Chase Edmonds will have value. They do love Chase Edmonds. They do think that he is a good running back. And come next year, will I be surprised if Drake isn't back on this team and they just decide to roll with Chase Edmonds and the rookie from ASU? Absolutely not. Like, I could definitely see that happening. But they did sign Kenyon Drake, and I think the Cardinals were really burned by the David Johnson stuff, and so they don't want to sign a running back to a big contract, and so having that, they'll want to use Kenyon Drake, get the mileage up on him, and then switch it over to Chase. Chase will have flex value, I think, on some weeks, and if anything were to happen to Drake, you're looking at a stud running back all of a sudden. But it shouldn't chase you off. Like, very similar to what we just said with Chubb and Kareem Hunt. There are going to be a lot of plays that Arizona is going to run, and it's going to be spread out. This is something that's really, really interesting that doesn't get talked about with this Arizona offense. So they wanted, you brought it up, Austin. They wanted to run the air raid offense last year. But what's very interesting, most people don't realize, is they didn't run it at all because they got through 5 weeks and all of their wide receivers were injured, and like they were starting, guys that shouldn't be starting. And so what Cliff Kingsbury had to do was they had to all of a sudden start running the ball and putting in running schemes as opposed to spreading it out. And so what we saw was Arizona went, on the offseason, they went and got DeAndre Hopkins. They're getting Christian Kirk back. So you will be able to see a lot more of this actual air raid this year, which would make Kenyon Drake even more explosive, which would make Chase Edmonds even more explosive than what they saw last year. And so I love this. You can't load the box against them. Like, you're not going to be able to. So this team is going to be able to run the ball. And I know I keep dragging this on. I'm sorry, but I get excited and passionate about my Arizona Cardinals.
I've got goosebumps right now, Johnny, from the excitement. I've got goosebumps as a Cardinals my number 2. I'm so excited by the coaching acumen of Cliff Kingsbury to be able to look at the roster, see what he has, not implement his system like a good coach can do, but does what a great coach can do and looks at the talent on their roster and devises a system to maximize the strengths of their players and minimize their weaknesses. It's why you see the New England Patriots so dominant in and out every season, despite who their running back or who their wide receiver might be. They can crank it up, crank it down, whatever they might be looking for.
And people aren't talking about that. People aren't talking about how. Go ahead, Travis.
We are, and Travis is too.
Yeah.
I think there's just a point to be made here that actually means that Drake's floor is a lot higher than people want to say it is. And the point is at the end of last year, this was the most quick team to throw screen passes. They had they were one of the most highest rated screen passes. And so, yes, to Johnny's point, I think Chase Edmonds has incredible flex appeal right now. He's one of my favorite running backs to draft later in drafts in ambiguous backfields. Not because the backfield itself is very ambiguous, but because the talent there is ambiguous. And if you actually look at all of these guys, even Eno Benjamin, all the running backs on their roster can really do a lot of things at the running back position, catching passes, being the goal line guy, all these different things. So I think it's one of those systems where, one, in Dynasty, pick up Eno Benjamin because I think he's got a good future as well. Pick up Chase Edmonds as well. But like in redraft, Drake is actually a lot safer than you think. The only risk you would really have is injury and his body holding up, and everybody's got that risk. So smash.
He's never had a problem before in his career with injury, and then.
Well, let's knock on wood, Johnny.
I know. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then I will say one added thing. Travis is correct on they all can do. They are very good at everything, but I will say of the bunch, Chase Edmonds lacks the receiving capabilities of Drake and of Eno. And so that's why I think that's a little bit more secure for Drake. And I think that Travis just hit it on the head that like people are not realizing what the floor is for Drake. And so I think that it's causing him to go a little bit later and slip.
My last point, as a Cardinals fan and somebody who's observed a lot of what they've done over the last several seasons on a personal level, I think the Cardinals and all of their playmakers, especially in the running back room, are being heavily slept on. I understand last year not getting super excited about it. We were dealing with a brand new quarterback who's sub 6 foot in Kyler Murray. We were dealing with a brand new coach coming out of college in Cliff Kingsbury. We were dealing with Steve Kine, the general manager, who had just had an offseason full of DUIs and questionable decisions. So people were saying, whoa, I'm not sure about the Arizona Cardinals. But let's fast forward now to that season's behind us. They improved in terms of the winning percentage. Kyler Murray ended up being the rookie of the year and one of the most dynamic players in the NFL from his legs and his arms. They brought in DeAndre Hopkins, arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL. Kenyon Drake came over and balled out for them. Oh, yeah, defensive player of the year in Chandler Jones, top elite level cornerback still in Patrick Peterson, and a great draft full of defensive weapons.
All right, it's not a Cardinal show here. Let's go.
It maybe should be, though, because they're getting slept on in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of excitement to be had. The defense, the wide receivers, the quarterback. I'm excited about it. Let's move on to a team that's far less exciting in the Washington football team, led by Dwayne Haskins, and their stable of running backs. Now, Adrian Peterson is still over there. Bryce Love, Antonio Gibson. I think they've even still got J.D. McKissick might even still be over there. He's with the. It's just there's so many. Travi, you've got a lot of takes on here. I know that Bryce Love has been somebody you've been grabbing in a lot of mock drafts, kind of fading on Adrian Peterson. Gibson's kind of being looked at as that gadget player. What's your take now on the Washington backfield situation now that we know Adrian Peterson is going to be opening up the season as the early down role, but Bryce Love, he's right there knocking on that door. How are you feeling about drafting in your fantasy team any one of these running backs out of Washington?
I'm okay with Gibson or Bryce Love. I think they both offer optimal upside if you're looking at them as far as where they can get to in this season, and especially in redraft leagues. Look, I get it. Adrian Peterson is a guy that's going to get a lot of carries at the beginning of the year, and he's going to give every shot to be their early down guy, especially with Bryce Love coming off such a serious injury. But let's not act like Adrian Peterson has a ton of upside here. And when you're late in drafts, and you're doing late round stuff, I want guys that have upside. And they were talking about Bryce Love as being somebody who can catch the ball, run the ball, and be what they wanted Geis to be, which was the all around back. So if they're saying that about Bryce Love, that means he's got the capabilities within his repertoire. But then at the other side, you look at Antonio Gibson. Gibson's a converted wide receiver, big in stature, and they are down on wide receivers here, so much so that Dontrell Inman is probably starting on the outside
Yeah.
opposite of Terry McLaurin, which means that there's going to be slot capabilities here up for grabs. No tight ends of note on the roster that you like. So you're looking at a guy like Gibson getting in there and getting a ton of work in the slot, and then maybe even some stuff out of the backfield. So I think that there's volume here to be had on a team that's going to throw a ton this year because they're going to be down a lot. So these are just kind of the things I'm thinking about, and I'm okay at where they're at ADP drafting both of these players.
I agree with that. And I want to move over now to another organization that's got a lot of running backs that they're handling, some with more upside than others. That's the New England Patriots. We know they drafted Sony Michel, who's had up and down games. Lamar Miller was recently signed. Both those aforementioned running backs are going to be starting out right now on the PUP list. They could be back for week 1, but they're not training with the team. One of the running backs who is training with the team is Damien Harris, and he, according to beat writers, has been looking pretty good. Now, I've personally been a big fan of drafting Damien Harris. I tried to get him in our dynasty rookie draft, but he was swooped in the second round before I could. I personally see a path to Damien Harris being the lead dog in New England, and I think it's a good shot of it happening. Johnny, am I smoking something, or does Damien Harris, is he being slept on right now, and his ADP should be rising up? What do you think?
I don't know. I don't know if he's being slept on. He's definitely a great dart throw. I just don't know how much of the running back backfield he's gonna get. Now he could come out and be dominant, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I always have a difficulty of taking a high draft pick on someone that you're not sure about at all. We've never seen him play in the football, and I think he got like six snaps or something, 6 touches last year, so not very effective at all. Or we haven't seen very much. We've only seen his college tape. So I have a reluctancy on like wanting to go, reaching for him too much. But yeah, like at the end of drafts, I'm smashing him all the time because yeah, the upside is there. The upside is like Garrett Blunt, 20 touchdowns. But I just want to let everyone know, like James White is still there. Like he's still got that receiving prowess locked up. You still have Rex Burkhead. We don't know how involved he's going to be. Sony Michel, we're not exactly sure when he's going to be back. But I do like taking the dart throw. I would just heed caution. Like I wouldn't take him, in the 8th or 9th round. I think that's reaching a little bit too high on someone that I'm not so certain about.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Definitely, we've got a path, but there's a lot of paths for a lot of guys, and the New England Patriots could always grab Jonah Gray
But he's
and
good.
throw him in there.
Good.
Jonah Gray, I know, man. That
I think he's worth the dart throw. I think you go there, he could get the touchdown runs, but then you're talking about Cam Newton also maybe swiping those from him. So as Johnny points out, I think maybe James White is the only one you're really, really high on here, especially in PPR leagues, because you see the role cemented with that team, as all these other guys are just names rotating in and out that we haven't seen on the field yet. Sony Michel, Lamar Miller, Damien Harris. You're kind of confused about how it can really play out.
Playing out, we are wondering how that's going to happen. Another team that we're wondering about how it's going to play out for their running backs is the Los Angeles Chargers. We talked about the Denver Broncos and their Phillip Lindsay, Melvin Gordon dynamic. We talked a little bit about Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. There's a name I don't know if we've said in the last month or so. That's Justin Jackson, backup running back out of the Chargers backfield. Now, Austin Eckler, we know, is entrenched as their main playmaker in the backfield, but he only ran for like 130-something touches last time. Really great receiving the ball and doing work on the ground once he's caught the pass. But Justin Jackson and also potentially Josh Kelly, their rookie running back they drafted this year, could be competing for some of the ground or the work on the ground with it. Are people sleeping on Justin Jackson? Is this going to be a productive, involved running back that's going undrafted in a lot of different teams? What do you think, Travi?
Yeah, I think we maybe as an industry haven't done enough service for Justin Jackson here, especially if we talked about if we're going to use the case to bang the drum for Melvin Gordon of all these years that they've used dual backs in the Chargers. Why aren't we using it to bang the drum for Justin Jackson here, who's a guy that can fall into 6, 7, 8 touchdowns this year just by being the backup running back, and maybe them wanting to save Austin Eckler's body. So I do think that Austin Eckler may have been overhyped at the beginning. He's settling down into the second round where I think he's worth it just based on pass volume. But Justin Jackson, man, you could be smashing him at his ADP right now because he, like I said, I think the touchdown upside alone makes him intriguing. And then what if something happens to Austin Eckler? Then you're sitting at a guy that could easily bring you forth into the playoffs and give you a lot of value. And let's not forget that Tyrod Taylor isn't a world beater at the quarterback position. He's definitely a guy that these coaches have in the past wanted to run the ball consistently with to help him be a game manager a little bit better than a game manager. So Justin Jackson has a lot of upside to me, and I think you're right. We just have not been talking about him enough.
Honestly, I think like I would rather have him than Damien Harris, I think, because one thing is that Justin Jackson had the second. We always talk about George Kittle had 3 touchdowns called back last year. Well, actually, who came in second in that and touchdowns called back or on penalties? And that was Justin Jackson with 2. He had 2 touchdowns called back last year. So yeah, it's kind of funny how last year we were all smashing, Justin Jackson late in drafts. And then it comes this year, and it's like, no, he legit has the shot. And they liked him last year. They liked him when they drafted him. He was a good back in college. He just hasn't been able to give like a lot of workload, but he's certainly someone that you can definitely see rising these next couple of weeks, especially as Hard Knocks gets into a couple more episodes and you start seeing a little bit of that Hard Knocks fever kick in. I think Justin Jackson could be the guy that starts creeping up those draft boards.
Yeah, handcuff who's going to have a role no matter what happens, and God forbid something does happen to Austin Eckler, he's the number 1 waiver wire pick that week if he's not already taken. We've been talking a lot about running backs. We're going to move on to some wide receivers now in a situation that we've touched on a lot, system-wise and individuals, and that's out of Las Vegas. The Las Vegas Raiders wide receiver situation looks a lot different than it did last year as they drafted 2 wide receivers early in this past draft, including Henry Ruggs, the first wide receiver taken off the board. A little bit more of a project player. Bryan Edwards is looking to be the more pro-ready wide receiver and has received a lot of good praise coming out. But we got finally a little clarity on the wide receiver situation. It's looking like Tyrell Williams is going to be that number 1 going against number 1 cornerbacks. And Henry Ruggs is going to be playing opposite him with Hunter Renfrow, Johnny's boy, over there in the slot. Do you have any confidence taking any of these receivers? Tyrell Williams, we know, was brought in to really be the number 2 behind Antonio Brown. Johnny made a great point of that last week. And Henry Ruggs is a rookie. Hunter Renfrow looks like a popsicle stick. And I'm just not totally sold on this wide receiver core being one that's going to be valuable. And I took Tyrell Williams in our listener league near the end of the draft because I think he's that number 1 wide receiver, but I just don't see a huge ceiling over here. I see a lot of distribution going to a lot of different players, including their running back core, led by Josh Jacobs, but has Jalen Richard as well going to be catching passes back there. So sticking with Johnny here, what do you think is do you have any wide receivers you're especially chomping at the bit right now, or what's your take on this wide receiver situation?
I don't mind going for Ruggs because I think the upside is definitely there. Having that high upside play each and every single is really nice. And we have to
Turner.
I understand that it might not be the sexiest team or anything like that, and you might not think like Oakland Raiders, wow, I really would like, pieces from that offense, but like Derek Carr is going to throw for over 4,000 yards in this offense. And so somebody has to catch those passes. And with all those mouths being fed, I don't expect Darren Waller to be a 4,000 yard receiver this year. So I do think that Hunter Renfrow is a guy that people should be, grabbing at the ends of drafts. Like I said, I like the Ruggs. Ruggs would probably be one of my upside picks. Like if I couldn't get Rieger and I wanted to get Ruggs, I think I'm okay there. But if I'm taking a stab at one of these guys, pick it back up.
Start through these. I think we got like 5 more topics left.
We could just fast forward through them. We'll just end it. Like I don't know how much I got.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I think we're back on now. So
Are we back on?
Yeah, I believe we are. Big Travie had
All right.
to.
Yeah, we are.
All right. Big Travie had to leave. He had to go back to day job.
He's grabbing some more information for our next show that's going to be coming on. And so he had to run off to do that or whatever he had to do in the bathroom. That's what he said. I don't know. But it's Johnny and we're picking it back up right where we left off. Thank y'all for hanging in there with us. We were just getting done wrapping up the Las Vegas Raiders aerial assault conversation. Yeah, they got weapons. I love Johnny's take on Derek Carr. He's going to get 4,000 yards. He threw for a lot more yards last year than people kind of expected, and I think he's going to be doing the same thing this year. Darren Waller is going to be the main recipient, his number one option. Henry Ruggs is going to be having some big games. He's got that burner speed. Different receivers are going to have different good games. Renfro's going to have some good games. Tyrell Williams is going to have a couple good games with a touchdown where you're happy you had him. But just overall, it's going to be pretty much a lackluster set of weapons unless we're talking about Darren Waller or Josh Jacobs. Is that right, Johnny?
I mean, I disagree with those, but if you...
Well, I know you like Henry Ruggs as a spark plug, as those big ones, but we're pretty big fans of Josh Jacobs and Darren Waller still.
Well, I'm fading Darren Waller. I actually don't think that you're going to. I think with the uptick in weapons, you'll see less targets go his way, and he was a big target guy. I mean, he should have scored more touchdowns, sure, but I just am not a big fan of those middling round tight ends. And so I just see that there's regression coming for me for Waller, and so that's why I'm staying away. I love Josh Jacobs though.
Yeah, I agree with you there on the mid-round tight ends. For me, it's a lead or bust. I'd rather take a TJ Hawkinson or even a Noah Fant or the Jets tight end over there or Gesicki, instead of grabbing those middle guys like a Hunter Henry or one of these or a Tyler Higbee, for instance. The only thing I will add about Darren Waller and why I think he still stands out is he's the only one with proven rapport alongside quarterback Derek Carr. And the weapons that they're bringing in are mainly rookies, which take time to get acclimated. And this is also Darren Waller's second year playing with Gruden and Derek Carr. So I think that he's going to be even better as he has more familiarity. You might see defenses keying in on him a little bit, but they were doing it at the end of the season anyways. He did start off hotter than he finished, but I think that Darren Waller is going to be a fine middle of the road tight end. I'd agree with you. I'm not drafting him. I haven't drafted him in a single mock. I think he's going to be better for the Raiders than he will be for your fantasy team where his current ADP is slotted. Another set of wide receivers that have had a lot of different question marks going on is Cincinnati. We know they've got AJ Green, the historic receiver in ways of his own, if you will, who's been dealing with a ton of injuries, and he's even got a new one now, a little bit of a hammy tweak. They drafted T. Higgins, a lot of talent over there. They've had talent, though, in the past, including John Ross. And right now, Tyler Boyd is looking like their only consistent wide receiver in terms of health, in terms of role in the system. These are some of the notes that we've seen coming out of camp. So given this update on where the injuries are at, who's been working with the first team, Johnny, who are you keeping your eye on in the Cincinnati wide receiver core, potentially of drafting at a value position?
Not really finding myself drafting any Cincinnati Bengals wide receivers. I just think that they're going to be too inconsistent. I don't like AJ Green. As soon as you get excited about him, he gets injured again, and I just think he just too much of a head. Like I'm not on it. The Tyler Boyd, I was interested in him as I think he's interesting because he's shown what he could do as the number 2. He's much better. So I think if there's anything, and he's going to play the Justin Jefferson role, which bode well for Justin Jefferson last year and Joe Burrow. So if I'm gonna go with anybody in that offense, I think other than Joe Mixon, I'm gonna go with Tyler Boyd. The only unfortunate part is I just don't see his upside as some of the other guys that are going in that same round as him. So that's where I oftentimes I'm not really drafting a lot of Cincinnati Bengals players.
Speaking of Justin Jefferson, moving on to another team in the Minnesota Vikings who drafted the aforementioned Justin Jefferson, former LSU wide receiver with Joe Burrow. Justin Jefferson is looking like he's going to be the number 3 wide receiver, at least to start it out behind BC Johnson. That's the way practice has been shaken up right now. And again, we don't have preseason. All we've got is the reports out of camp shared with us by the beat writers. Justin Jefferson, a lot of people were thinking he was going to be lining up opposite of Adam Thielen. Right now, it looks like that might at least take some time. Is this news giving you any pause or any thought on who you might be taking in the wide receiver core outside of Adam Thielen there in Minnesota, Johnny?
Irv Smith, we've been talking about this kind of since our mock draft marathon.
Tight
How
end.
Yeah, tight end Irv Smith is probably the only option that I'm really rolling with on this offense for Minnesota. I just have concerns about Adam Thielen. There is a path for he could be a top 10 wide receiver. I just don't like where he's going in drafts. It just gives me the heebie-jeebies, so I don't really take him very often. And then Justin Jefferson, we've been talking about this all offseason. The COVID, rookie wide receivers already have a difficulty coming in on a normal offseason. You add COVID and learning all of that, so it's not a surprise that Justin Jefferson is having a little bit of difficulties right now. Getting on the field or staying on the field. I'm not surprised at all. And I haven't been drafting him in a lot of leagues either. So.
I think that's a really good take. And Irv is a name that a lot of fantasy players aren't used to hearing. Kyle Rudolph has been the name we've been accustomed to now for years, but he's looking like he's going to be serving more of a blocking role. And Irv Smith there could be really filling in as that pass catching option in Minnesota. So another wide receiver set over there in Indianapolis that has a wide receiver rookie with a lot of talent, Michael Pittman, is still in the mix, but we're hearing about a former rookie wide receiver and Paris Campbell, second year coming in now, who's receiving a lot of strong reports out of camp. Coach Frank Wright said that Paris Campbell looks strong, fast, explosive, good hands, good things for a wide receiver. He's probably going to be playing out of the slot, a role that Phillip Rivers has shown a lot of affection towards in years. Is this coach speak, or are you actually going to get excited about Paris Campbell and Phillip Rivers over there in Indianapolis, Johnny?
I'm not really getting too excited for it. I think that there is potential. I mean, I did like him coming out of college, and so I did think that there was something there. But as I read more into this offense, and if anything, T.Y. Hilton is the guy that I would want in this offense. If I'm going to a wide receiver, as much as Phillip Rivers, tosses the ball around, he spreads the ball around quite a bit. So if there's going to be, that was like the one knock on Keenan Allen, was like Keenan Allen's this beast wide receiver, but Phillip Rivers just doesn't like target him. And when he does target him, that was when Keenan Allen had those 200-yard games. So, I think that if you're in a dynasty, Paris Campbell is someone that you should, I don't mind getting him or trying to go after him as like an add-on piece. In redraft leagues, I don't know if I'm touching him in redraft leagues, in the draft, but he could be a waiver wire guy. Who knows?
As somebody who has Paris Campbell in his dynasty team, I hope you're right. I would agree with that take in redraft leagues, though. I think you'll see him coming off the waiver wire potentially a lot more, and people excited about it. I'm not sure if drafting him right now is a must.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about the Jets tight end Chris Herndon, and he's been getting a lot of attention right now in camp, along with Jamison Crowder. Now, I'm a big Rashad Perriman fan of the upside that he brings to the table, but he's not really being talked about right now. We're talking about Jamison Crowder, and we're talking about Chris Herndon. And is Herndon moving up on your boards? Is Crowder? I know you've been a fan of what he's capable of, especially in PPR formats. Are these guys moving up for you at all, or do you kind of like where they've been going near the end of drafts as is?
Yeah, I like where they're going, and I don't think that even with this, hype, quote unquote, I don't see their ADP rising too much. Like a lot of people aren't excited about the Jets' offense, and so, but like I said, if it's always nice to have like a bunch of these dart throw tight ends just on your mind for because at the end people and a lot of people know it these days they are taking those late round dart throws of tight ends because of what has transpired over the last couple of years with tight ends in late rounds. So if all of those guys get taken up and you're grasping for straws, Irv Smith, we gave you that one, but Chris Herndon is another guy. He's a post-hype sleeper. People were talking him up last year, and he's kind of been in the doghouse for Adam Gase, and that was the major issue. It's never really been the talent. The talent's always, been kind of juicy and intriguing. So it'll be interesting to see if he can put it all together. But I like taking these dart throws later in drafts if I can get them.
Absolutely, and that's what those late round dart throws are about, right? Get that upside, get a potential vein of an offense that is being overlooked a little bit for whatever reason it might be.
Like,
Speaking of, you might have some of those What's that?
well, like Crowder had 20 targets in a game like that, or 20 receptions in a game last year. Like that's insane.
And he's got another year. He's still just 27 years old. Sam Darnold is expected to progress. He had mono last year as well. I like what the Jets could be doing. The only thing capping it is Adam Gase, in my opinion,
Yeah.
as we all
Like if I'm in a
love to talk about.
if I'm in a PPR league, I'm much more inclined to like kind of go up a little bit higher for him because I just do see him just getting peppered with targets. Like he's a good receiver.
Speaking of pepper for targets, it's bringing us to our last subject here, and that's the Miami Dolphins. Devontae Parker been peppered with targets at the end of the year as they brought in Ryan Fitzpatrick and really let him run the show. And we saw Devontae Parker emerge into that wide receiver fantasy players have been hoping he would be for a long time. I know you had him on some teams game time, and he worked out very nicely there at the end of the year. Fitzpatrick is still there, but they drafted Tua Tagovailoa out of this year, coming in out of Alabama there, and now his hip injury caused concern, but he's been moving well, according to the Miami Herald. Their beat writers are saying he's looking good inside and outside of the pocket. Fitzpatrick is locked into that week one role. This could just be fluff speak. It's obviously better than hearing Tua is not getting on the field and looks like his lower half is made out of hardened clay. It's not like we're hearing that. He's moving. It's good. It's not a lot of specificity. How does this potential quarterback shift up affect guys like Devontae Parker and that backfield over there with Jordan Howard and Matt Breida, as well as the entire Dolphins organization? What's your take on this quarterback news, Johnny?
Well, it leads you to uncertainty, right? It leads to questions and whether you can trust in taking, a Devontae Parker in the 6th round or, in 7th, 8th, 9th round take, Jordan Howard or Burrito man over there. As well as, like there are, Preston Williams. He's coming off his torn ACL injury and he was starting to break out. So people are intrigued by him. I am okay with okay. I shouldn't say I'm okay with all the. I mean, they're gonna be fine. Jordan Howard and Matt Breida, they'll be okay. I think they'll be flex option, like RB3 flex options for you. I think that there'll be weeks where Jordan Howard will be an RB2 because he will get the goal line work there. But for these wide receivers, people might be a little bit pushed off of them or a little bearish on them because of that quarterback controversy or we don't know when Ryan Fitzmagic is going to get benched or whatever. But one thing I'll say is that Ryan Fitzmagic is an absolute pro. And one thing is that we've seen time and time again is that he's going to go out and give it his all each and every single time. And when the time comes for him to, hold the clipboard, he is going to do so and completely keep helping Tua. And so he's a great mentor for that. And we have to remember, like, Tua's number one thing as a quarterback was his accuracy. Like, people were talking about how accurate he is as a quarterback. They were comparing his accuracy to Drew Brees. So for me, I'm not that concerned about Devontae Parker. I don't think the risk is as big as people think it is, and I think that he has that pretty. He completely broke out last year. I don't think that people should be questioning him as much as they are. But I mean, this wide receiver room is so stacked. I can understand why Parker's going where he's going.
I love Devontae Parker. While they do have a lot of options, I think that Parker is the only one who can fill the role that he does. And I'm not concerned about number one cornerback squaring up against Devontae Parker. I think he's got enough stuff to make production happen. I think Tua could be focusing in on him. You see rookie quarterbacks lean on their best receivers a lot of the time. So I'm loving Devontae Parker with where he's going. And I'm just excited for the Dolphins to hopefully they can get out of this hump and take a once great franchise back to where they could be. We'll see, though. I want to give a big shout out to everybody in Whisper Nation who's tuned in, been watching with us along. What's going on, Scott? What's going on, Yaz? What's going on?
Brandon S. I saw him in there.
Brandon S. What's good, my dude?
Appreciate
it's great
you
to
guys.
be with you all of here. We're going to be doing these news and notes every Friday after 1 o'clock when the official injury reports drop, breaking down some of these takes and letting you know what you can expect as we go into the weekend games. Johnny, am I missing anything?
Nope, it'll just be a lot of fun. We'll do lineup questions then as well. We're just getting into the flow of our regular season schedule now. So please join us every Friday, and hopefully I can get my computer issues worked out here so the streams won't crash anymore. But I'll work on that part. If you guys just plan on being here every Friday with us, we will make it happen. Yeah, and hit that thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed to our channel. You want to have a fun community behind you and win some championships, join the Fantasy Whisperers. We're here for you.
Let's do it. Let's do it together. With that, I'm Austin Sear. It's Johnny Game Time Hicks. We're out.
Peace.